So, we are starting a podcast. It's why does it feel so wrong to be human at work? And I never thought we would do this, Pinaki, but not only are we starting a podcast, we're really kind of doing it in the scariest way imaginable, aren't we?
Honestly, I don't exactly know how you talk me into this one. But yes, we are launching this podcast live on stage at the IABC World Conference. It's an international conference of business communicators. And yeah, we're just going to dive right into why does it feel so wrong to be human at work live on stage.
Enjoy, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kari McLean, and I'm here to introduce you to this vibrant duo, Pinaki and Chris, who will help us proactively think outside the box and take ownership of value-added communications going forward with synergy and alignment to disrupt our respective industries with a paradigm shift that gives us boots on the ground so we can draw a line in the sand that will really move
Carrie, what's going on here? What's Pinaki, help me out here. What's going on here?
This is all about being human. You could use your own words to introduce us into the stage here today. Why don't we, there you go. Toss it away.
Well, while I do not have a bottle of champagne to crack on a helm, I am here to welcome you to the inaugural opening of the new podcast by Pinaki and Chris. Look at those t-shirts. Woo-hoo!
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks so much, Carrie, for whatever that was. It was really appreciated. So let's kick this off. Pinaki, I just want to start things off with a question. How are you feeling?
Good. I'm excited. This is wild to be here right now, folks, with all of you here. And the truth is, I'm nervous as heck. This is the first time we're recording live on stage here at IABC. If y'all ever been to one of my workshops or sessions before, I have a bunch of slides, highly designed. We only have 2 slides. That's one of them. And yeah, I'm really honestly nervous. But I think a lot of times we ask that question and we're not sure what the response is. It's a formality. Hey, how you doing? Okay, let's get to business now. But How are you doing? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I don't think I'm as nervous as you seem to be, Pinaki. And really, it's just because I think there's really only 2 ways this can come out. I think one is we're going to inspire people to think differently, a little bit outside the box, challenge so-called best practices, and bring a refreshed perspective to how you communicate. And then the other way, of course, that it'll go is we'll fail spectacularly. It'll be a train wreck, humiliating, and also we will ruin our respective careers.
No big deal.
But yeah, I think one of the things for me that's so important is I'm so passionate about helping our peers, our colleagues, think in different ways about taking a different and fresh perspective to who it is that we do a lot of our work for. And so, we're in the business of internal communications, and I always love this idea that we're talking to humans, not just resources. And that whole idea of human resources always felt like an oxymoron to me because often the temptation, especially when we're time poor, is to get a little bit more reactionary and a little bit more transactional in the way that we communicate. And I think this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that you and I have seen over the years and things that we've discussed that we can help people challenge assumptions that we take to work with us.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you for that. It feels good to be here, and it feels good to talk about a subject like this because it is about all of these little habits and best practices and all of that stuff that we've been doing all of this time. So welcome everybody to Why Does It Feel So Wrong to Be Human at Work? Chris and I have gone on this mission to take a look at these habits and things that we do every day and question it. Does it still keep us human? Or are we turning into something else? Or are we expecting everyone to be robots and something else, resources and these like autonomous things, right? Like simply asking, how are you doing, and expecting an answer back.
It's become a rhetorical question, and I think, when I think about what's happening, Pinaki, is that so much of what we do and some of the things that we do in the workplace, it's the result of decades and decades and generations of muscle memory that we've learned and haven't really questioned why we do it. So I remember I was talking to somebody at the Mix and the Six last night, which was great. It was a great event. And we were talking a little bit about a conversation I had about someone whose email I was looking at. And I was looking at their email signature, and I asked the question about their email. It was a really nice looking email signature. It had all the information on it, had their name, their title. And I said, it's got your address on it. And I said, that's really cool, including your postal code. Why do you have that? And he was saying to me, it's because in case someone wants to send me something. And I said, oh, cool. When's the last time someone sent you something? And he said, well, it hasn't happened yet. And I said, okay. So I think it's great to have your postal code just in case someone does want to send you a letter. I think it's really useful. And then I asked a follow-up question. I said, you have 3 different phone numbers down here. What are these phone numbers? He said, well, one is our main office line, one is my cell phone number, and one is my fax number. And I said, okay. I guess you're using fax as well. And it's so funny how I think some of these things, we don't ever really question it because it's just the way we've always done things. And I think one of the things that we keep on coming across are, it makes for really interesting conversations, but there are some things that we see as best practices, I think, that are worth challenging. And I think we can take with us as communications experts and professionals to start having more interesting conversations with our leadership teams. That's
right. So we've all thought about there is something that we have to unlearn. And the concept of this came to me a little bit over a year ago. So my agency, Local Wisdom, we have monthly town hall meetings. They're called roundtables. And for it's been multiple years we've been doing this, but at the beginning of every meeting, we start by having an open forum where anyone could get up and thank someone for something that they did, within that past month. So it's like an appreciation session. And it's great, people love it, it's like inspiring, it's motivating. But then I've noticed this trend that happens about 20 minutes into the meeting when people are thanking each other, they'll start to apologize for it. Like, oh, I have a few more, I'm sorry. Or I'm gonna be quick, sorry. And hearing that, and I've said, look, don't be sorry. If we spent this whole time thanking each other, that's a win for me. But then it keeps happening. And I found myself doing it the other day. And so I'm thinking why does it feel so wrong to spend time to just thank each other and appreciate each other? And why does productivity get in the way of that? And I'm like, you know what? This thanking each other just helps each other, reinforces each other, makes everything feel good. It boosts productivity, but yet something about what we've learned in the past causes us to feel bad about it, which is why the concept started out. So there's a lot of these things that just why does it feel so wrong? And that was the impetus for me, and that's what started it. What about for you? What felt wrong for you that made you think about this concept?
And it was probably a few years ago. So I started kind of thinking about how bizarre some things are that we do. And so a couple examples. One was, I used to work for a larger corporation, and one of the things that we did was we had annual performance reviews.
Oh boy.
And yeah, exactly. So I remember I was told you have till this day to fill out on Workday 3 or maybe 4 SMART goals, and they've got to be SMART, specific, measurable, and everything else. And so I did. I spent a lot of time thinking about, what do I want my goals for the year to be? And then I shared it with my manager, and the manager came back to me with some changes. Can we change this word to this? And I did it. And then we did it, and then we locked it into Workday. And then about 3 or 4 months later, I realized we haven't had any conversations about these goals. And then the year went by, and there was no conversation about these goals. We didn't talk about it at all. And so a year later, we looked back on them, we dusted them off, and there was I think there was at least 2 of the goals that we said, oh, that was still on your list. Let's just get rid of that. And I just think it because we do so much of this stuff by rote and we don't actually think about what it is that we're doing. I found it was a really unsatisfactory experience, and I didn't think it was a great experience for either myself or for my manager. And I'm not saying annual performance reviews, there's anything wrong with it. I think it's useful to have goals. But what I was finding was that exercise and that process didn't do a lot for me. I didn't think there was anything that it did to benefit my year.
Right on. Let me ask this question of the crowd. Is that story sound familiar to you? Can you make some noise if that story sounded familiar with you? Right? It's happened to me. It's happened to all of us. We're like, why and where did this come from? Right? And that's where this started. So Chris and I met about a year ago at IABC World Conference in New York City. And we met serendipitously, and a series of events happens here. We met through Maria and Letty, right? So thank you, Maria, because we wouldn't be here if not for this. And it's just so interesting, right? Like these sessions, this conference, it makes connections, and it makes us move in directions, right? So we met. Let's talk about that night. Where did we go? We went to. We somehow ended up in Pete Davidson's bar in New York City. I think afterwards, like, you and I connected, and we're like, hey, Chris is from Gallagher, you're in internal comms and employee experience. I'm from Local Wisdom. We're, also internal comms and employee experience. And we were like, hey, we should try to do some work together or do something like that. And we try to meet up and talk about business and see how we could work together. But then what ended up happening was we just had interesting conversations, not necessarily about work. I mean, we talked about kids and lives and things like that. And it was such a refreshing, interesting time to just chat. And then it almost like started feeling like, oh, maybe we should be talking about business, or maybe we shouldn't be talking about business. And then the lines just started getting blurred in a little while. And at some point you're like, hey, we should do a talk at IABC. We're like, all right, what should we talk about? We talked about this concept. And then I don't know how you did this, but somehow you convinced me to say, hey, instead of doing a talk at IABC, let's do a podcast and let's launch it at IABC. And I'm like, what? And here we are today.
And I know that, thank you, and I know that they say try to do something that scares you every single day. And I feel like recording live a podcast on stage at the world's largest communications conference, I think that qualifies as something that's pretty scary. But I think one of the things that I always think about, and I've been thinking about this for a long time now, is throughout this conference, we talk a little bit about going from small C communications to big C communications, and getting at the table and all these different kinds of things. And it always occurs to me, I think one of the themes I keep on running into, Pinaki, is the theme of context. And I find often, we were talking a little bit about having this transactional approach to communications, and it's very unrewarding for our audiences because a lot of times our internal audiences will give us, we need to communicate about this, and we say, okay, sure, we can communicate about that. And the instinct for us often is to be comprehensive but not comprehensible, right? So we want to make sure we have all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed, and that we want to have all the information there. But the reality is that so many of the people that we communicate with, our audiences being employees, they're time poor and they have to make decisions. So their inbox really becomes a triage unit. And so for so many of us, in fact, right now, I'm sure as people are listening in on this, that they're checking their inbox and just kind of seeing what's coming in. And so I think that was one of the things that I found was really instructive, is understanding from an employee perspective, because we do quite a lot of discovery. I think all of us as communicators, this is an important part of the work that we do, but also understanding that context, instead of just being transactional about it. So one of the things that we often communicate about, just as an example at Gallagher Communication, is in the area of communicating benefits, which is important. It's an important part of the value proposition at organizations everywhere, but we do take a transactional approach to it. So it's like you have $750 of coverage for chiropractor without actually really talking about what does this mean for us? How do we create content that is attractive to read, that people look forward to reading and wanting to consume?
That's right. And I think that's where we started kind of going into, like, this is something that we need to talk about. This is something that we have to put out there, right? And so, yeah, what we ended up doing was say, you know what? We'll put it to the test serendipitously. We'll make an abstract, submit it to the IABC gods, and if they accept, we'll do a podcast. And so we got accepted, and so here we are. So let me ask you this question first. Does this resonate with you by applause or whatnot? Yeah? So now I want to kind of dip into it a little bit, right? So, you know, as you heard about this talk, like something compelled you to be here. Why does it feel so wrong to be human at work, right? What stories or things came up in your minds, right? I want to hear, if you could like raise your hand, just shout out. There's one. Return to office. That's one of those things where like a lot of people are just, oh my God, you're mandating me to come back after like we did all of this work to be able to work remotely, right? Does anyone else feel that? Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else have another thing that popped up in their minds? Oh, back there, you mind shouting? Actually taking a 15-minute break, that's absolutely true. We have one of our episodes are all around taking the afternoon off. Thank you. Does anyone resonate with that? You had one, I believe. Did you raise your hand? Single parenting, right? Looking at the employee or a person as a whole and the whole like life around them, that's brilliant. And you had one as well, sorry. Code switching, yes, absolutely. Andrea, tone-deaf communication, right? When you don't know who you're talking to exactly and everything like that. No emotion. We're just saying words and blah, 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 blah. So, we have one more, last one. But right, why does it feel so wrong to be at a conference? Right? You just like Chris said, like you feel compelled to just be there and like, oh my God, what am I missing? Who's saying what? And right, why is that? Right? And we talk about all of those things. So what we did when we started this is Chris and I came up with a list, and similar, like the list just grew long really fast. And so what we did was we said we're gonna create this podcast, and we're not gonna have many guests. We'll just talk about these issues, and we'll like pick the top ones. And what we wanted to do is just bring it to light. So we cater like a broad outline. Like we'll pick a topic, and we'll like talk, what is this, and how does it show up in the work world, and what's the history behind it? Like where did it come from, and you know what's the bad about it, and possibly what's the good about it, because there is a positive side to certain things that are bad as well. And then what can we do differently to like move that forward, to move the needle, to bring it to a more modern place, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that's important for everyone to understand is it's not like Seinfeld. It's not a show about nothing. There's always a focus. So we always know that something kind of feels vaguely wrong, but we can't quite put our finger on it. So there was a great opportunity for you and I to discover and explore different areas like diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging. It was a great opportunity for us to talk about leadership and how they communicate with people, and just so many different areas that we went on. And it's been a really, really fun journey. And I do have to say, it's one of the most rewarding things I've done in my career, and it's been a really fun ride. One of the things that Pinaki and I, it's not a hot take, and we're not saying that we have any or all of the answers, but what we really would love to do is to inspire people to think differently and to give things a second thought instead of just going through the motions of, and not that anybody here is going through the motions, but sometimes it is tempting because when we are time poor and we have internal stakeholders that say, I need this by Thursday of next week, sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees. And that was, I think, a big part of the impetus for us to start having these conversations.
Yeah, totally. And it's just like you said, like there's just habits that have been instilled in us. Like I'll share like just a really quick story. A long time ago, my first time I went to present, I went to meet with a client to basically pitch us doing a presentation together. We actually met up at a bar, and I was like, hey, I pitched this presentation, and...
Pinaki, do you meet everybody at the bar?
Shit. Oh, crap. I'm from New Jersey, everybody, but you kind of got me there. Doesn't most business happen at a bar, right? Yeah. So, well, anyhow, I asked, he said yes, and my immediate reaction was to pull out my phone and say, hey, all right, let's schedule a meeting for we're gonna do this. And then he looked at me, he was like, Pinaki, we're at a bar, we have a napkin, we could do it right now. And I was just like, wow, why was it baked in me to just like schedule a meeting and delay it? And you know what, we started it, we came up with the presentation there, and it rocked. But that's the idea behind this, right? Is there's just so many small little things that we do every day that's just been baked in us, and that's what we wanted to bring to light here. So thank you for everyone who like raised some of those why does it feel so wrongs, because it's very validating. One thing to say, basically all of the things that were mentioned, we have an episode on, right? We actually have recorded the whole season already. This is episode 1. We recorded 10 episodes. Our last episode was recorded on Friday. It's a weird time bender thing for us right now. But out of all of the topics that were mentioned, the only thing we didn't talk about was the return to work one. We don't have an episode on return to work, right?
No, we don't. And it is definitely a very germane topic, I think, for everybody, because the reality is people have changed fairly dramatic over the last 3 years. And so I really like that idea of that as a topic about why does it feel so wrong to return to work.
You want to dig into that one? You want to just give them a little taste of what each episode is like?
Sure. So none of our episodes are scripted, but we have a general idea of what we want to try to focus on. And so Pinaki and I will take it away, and we'll start to jot down some thoughts and some ideas of things that we think might be or make for interesting conversation. And return to work for me, one of the things that is most exciting for me is that it's challenging the way that we think about work.
I just want to say, no, if somebody else wants to say it, it's a very important point, clarification. It's not return to work. We've all been working.
To the office.
Return to the office. Good call.
Return to the office. Great
Nice.
point on the semantics. You're exactly right. Return to the office. But one of the things is, and we've had some great conversations this week, Pinaki, about the advent of AI and how artificial intelligence is going to start to be a very useful tool in terms of helping us with productivity. But one of the things that I think is really under assault now, because I've been talking to a lot of organizations that are starting to look at, hey, instead of a 5-day work week, what about shifting over to a 4-day work week? And there's organizations that are doing unlimited vacation. And I love this idea now that we're starting to recognize that so many of us have knowledge-based, desk-based work. And what that means is it's recognizing the old vestiges of how we used to work, which is a lot of it was manual. You had to go, like 100 years ago, you had to come literally to work to work the machine or to make widgets and to do things like that. That's no longer the case. We have to remember the work that we do, it doesn't somehow fit magically every week into a 5-day week, 40 hours, and then somehow everything seems to magically wrap up at 5 p.m. every single day. That's not the reality of how work works. And the other thing that we talk about is, Pinaki, is that we're also humans. Mm-hmm. And we have pride, we have envy, we have joy, happiness, anger. And one of the things that's so important is we also have good days, we also have bad days. And on a Friday at 2 o'clock, the weather being spectacular like it is right now outside, is our productivity level the same as it might be on a Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning? Especially if you've finished the work that you've tried to do for that week, you finished with your meetings. A lot of organizations still measure our output by time, and I think that's not necessarily the thing that gets us as excited as what are the outcomes that we should be working towards.
That's right. And so this mandate to come back to the office space, and thank you for that correction again. It's strange and it's weird because, right, we've all taken this massive step to be able to work remotely. And many of us have been asking for it before the pandemic, but the pandemic made it happen. And now there's this mandate to come back. And why is that? Can somebody answer that question for me?
Well, I was going to ask, how many people remember those newspaper ads that used to say, hey, earn up to $2,000 a week working from home? And I don't even know what these jobs were, but it sounded really enticing. And you fast forward to 2020, and it happened. It became a reality for us. And I think a lot of our attitudes now, because one of the things that I think is really important to understand about, if we think about who our audience is as employees, a lot's happened over the last 3 years. One of them is everything got a whole lot more expensive, right? So there's an actual cost to coming into the office. There's the cost of gas, or there's a cost of a train ticket, parking. For a lot of people, they don't have time to buy their lunch, so you might have to spend. Lunch is a lot more expensive now too, and tip. I don't know what's going on with tipping, but it's out of control. And there's just so many things now that feed into this. A lot of people have to get a dog walker. They have to pay for daycare. And so very quickly, it starts to become a $40 day. And this is something that, for a couple of years now, we haven't had to think about in terms of financially, how does it hit us? So I think that might be one of the areas of potential resentment.
Yeah. It's true. And it's kind of like, I don't think there's like a clear rationale why. And I'd ask this question for anyone in this room, right? Like, when there are mandates to return to the office, does anyone have a clear rationale why? Is it like collaboration? And do you want to? I'll repeat that really quickly too for everyone too. There's this like understanding that you can't have the same type of culture that's all like virtual that we're used to when we were in the office, right? And then there's like this levels of collaboration that we could do when we're together, right? So that's a valid thing, right? That's a good reason to say, hey, everybody, come back to the office. We need you here 5 days a week or 3 days a week or whatever that is, right? Anyone else have another like interesting tidbit? There's another one over here. So we have like the economic thing that like Chris talked about earlier. So we do want that re-stimulation of the economy there, right? So there are things about all of these things that feel wrong that have another side to it, right? We have another one back there. Sorry, I'll come over there closer to you. Absolutely. So companies and businesses have invested a lot of monies into office spaces, and some of them are like owners of the office spaces and leases off the office spaces, right? So there's things like that are there too. We have a few more hands up. One more over there. So getting back allows you to at least meet folks and have those serendipitous conversations as well, right? Really neat. And I think there was one more. When different groups are treated differently and have different rules, there could be like animosity between folks, right? And I think we'll go into one more real quick back there. Confidentiality of data, and to keep security when we're out there. So these are all like reasons why like there's this kind of like big backlash. Like, why does it feel so wrong to be mandated back to the office? So there are so many good reasons why we should come back to the office. Then the question is like, why is it so wrong? Why are people having this like resentment for it? And then there might be like two camps on the issue too. But what do you think about that?
Well, I like what someone was saying just a little bit earlier about how sometimes our communications seem a little bit cold or disconnected. As organizations, we have priorities, but we also have humans that we do need to try to communicate and connect with. And so if we're not, I think there's an exciting movement that's happening right now. So there's work that's being done at, or there was a paper by MIT Sloan where it talked about how leadership has evolved. So there's that eroding style of leadership, which is command and control, top down, permission based. And then there's an enduring style of leadership, which is more profit-oriented and looking at the business. But then there's an emerging style of leadership, and that new leadership style that I think is emerging is one that's more has a higher EQ, is more empathetic, nurtures passion and purpose. And I think organizationally, we should take and embrace that viewpoint in terms of how can we connect with our employees in a way that doesn't just make them feel like they're resources, that we are appreciating them as, we're not just baristas or analysts or communications managers, but we're also moms. We're also slow pitch all-stars on the weekend, and we're also guitar players. And there's just so many things that I think make us a complete person that sometimes organizations forget. And so, I was at a conference in Geneva like a couple of months ago, and we were talking about why organizations offer health and dental benefits. And I started asking the question, how much do you spend, just conservatively, per person, per year on your health and dental benefits? And it's anywhere from like $5,000 and all the way up to $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 in some cases. So even if you go really conservatively at $5,000 per person, and look at 200 employees. That's $1 million that's being spent every single year that doesn't obviously have a direct impact on the work that you do. But what I keep on seeing is that you're spending all this, but then how do you talk about your benefits? And so one of the things that we looked at was, how do people describe their health and dental benefits on their company career pages? And the same language kept on coming up, Pinaki, which is, we offer a competitive benefits package. And so I thought about that. I was like, well, okay, what is that? What does that actually mean? And competitive really just means it's competitive. You're in the game. It doesn't mean it's a great plan. It just means it's another way of saying, we're just offering this, honestly, because everyone else is doing the same thing, and we just don't want to be that weird company that doesn't have this offering. But it's such a missed opportunity. And this is where I think about the positioning, the fact that we are humans. It's not just something that we benchmarked, that the HR team looked at, they benchmarked it across the industry. It's like, we need something competitive. That's fine, but it's not the positioning we need to take to our employees. There's a missed opportunity to really connect the humanness of taking care of people's well-being, and that the fact that there's a commitment, and a substantial one of that, to help take care of people.
You know, I guess that's where it feels wrong, right? To be mandated anything, right? Like, it's like, who likes to be mandated here? Round of applause for who likes to be mandated here. But yes, for the record, nobody applauded. And that's really where it comes down to, right? So like, how can we take this need, that's a real human need of connection, of re-stimulating the economy, to collaborating, to being able to talk to upper management and have those serendipitous moments that we can't get to exactly on Zoom. And you know, damn it, I just want to like hang out with y'all again, right? Like, I just want to be together. But then, like, why does it feel so wrong to have these like communications that are all about mandates and putting this fist down and say, if you don't come by, then you're going to have, like, you know, pay decreases and things like that. That's not human, right? It doesn't feel human, you know? But you know what? It feels like that's the way businesses work. And that's the idea behind the podcast, is to be able to just shed some light onto that type of communication, onto that type of stuff. Because if we don't talk about it, nothing will change, right? And that's where we come. So let me ask, does that make sense for y'all? Does that resonate with y'all so far? Thank you. Thank you very much. That's what we have in store for these episodes as we get into things like, why does it feel so wrong to take the afternoon off, right? Why does it feel so wrong to say no or confront the issue? Because these are human things that we do, and they have this like negative side to it, but there's also a positive side to it, and it's not a easy yes or no thing, right? It's a complex conversation that needs to happen, right? So while we've been going on this journey, it's like recording this season, felt like we recorded like a Netflix show or something like that. While we were going on, we thought that we would have a lot of like talking and a lot of like teaching for everyone. And what was interesting about this journey is I found myself learning a lot and unlearning a lot and re-looking at my own self as far as like, what are all the things that have been instilled in me that makes me not human at the office space? And that was uplifting. Did you find the same thing? And would you like to share, and I could share?
Yeah, so I think one of the themes that we keep on touching on, and I love what you were saying about one of the examples that we had, which is, why does it feel so wrong to say no to your boss? And one of the themes, Pinaki, that I found, I don't know about you, but I found this in every single episode that we were talking about, was this theme of psychological safety. And so there's an author, Amy Edmondson. She wrote The Fearless Organization. She talks about psychological safety, and I think there's so many organizations that have misgivings about what this actually stands for, which is it's not about mental health. It's actually, and it's also not about, we had conversations with one of our clients where they were talking about the importance of psychological safety, because it's kind of a trending thing with leadership. But they thought that there was a trade-off. It was a compromise that, well, if we make people feel more comfortable, then that means that we're not going to be as productive or able to achieve our objectives. But there was a dramatic misgiving about what that actually is. In fact, it's the exact opposite, right? Really what it's about is giving an environment where people can feel like they can speak up and they can talk about things that are uncomfortable. And so in an environment that's not psychologically safe, what we kept on finding is that what this does is it gets in the way of innovation, of courage, of creativity. And so it's something that we just keep on saying over and over, whether the discussion is about diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it's about saying no to your boss, looking at this evolved leader that we talked about, this emerging style of leader that I think is so important now for organizations to understand, as building the fabric of your leadership should be someone who does take more of a human approach to understanding and empowering people to have a relevant voice in organizations.
That's right, right. And like for me, it really kind of like hit me as far as like how prepared are we like all the time? Like for me, like it's funny, like as I was saying earlier, that I come to the table. We actually, when we first started, there was a lot of like scripting and a lot of like talking through it. But then it was like, this does not sound human. It doesn't sound conversational. And so it made me think about like, you know, how do we prep? How do we get ourselves ready for it? And like even today, right? Like it's just one of those things where for me, I had to accept this level of vulnerability that yes, I could come up here on stage. We are being recorded, and I could say the wrong thing like return to work, right? But that's human, right? That's us. We make mistakes. It's gonna happen. And I'm not saying that we're going out there to make mistakes, but we're going out there with the best intentions to treat each other like human beings. And the only way we could do that is to be human beings, right? Everyone, we keep talking about authenticity, but if I have to talk to you about authenticity, then it's just not authentic, right? It's just a whole oxymoron there. But again, if we don't take a step back and talk about it, then it just doesn't go anywhere. So let's close off a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the moral here. Like, what's one thing or a few things that people could walk out of here with? I really want, there's a whole podcast behind it. Please subscribe and tell all your friends. But I want to give you all here today something that you could walk out with, at least some motivation, some action steps, something you could start doing now. So would you have anything to say about that, Chris?
Yeah, so I think psychological safety is one of those, one of the themes that I wanted to touch on. But I think a lot of it is about taking a step backwards and looking at what are the outcomes that we're really looking to do. So again, abandoning just the pure focus on the message, the content, the channels, but then evolving that so that, I talked earlier about context, giving a much richer context around what this means for your audiences as employees, so that they understand what this message actually means for them, right? So I think that's one of the things that a lot of people bristle at, because it sounds like, well, if I'm going to create content, additional content over and above this thing that I have to communicate, it feels like it's a lot of work and requires a lot of resources. But as we've seen, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, these can be really useful tools to help us get that first 90% draft, and then we can start working from there. But I think the volume of content is not something that we should be worried about. It should be more focused on what is the quality of the kinds of content that people really will be drawn to, and that will actually lead to outcomes that matter.
Absolutely. Like when we were talking about that return to the office, right? Like so many great reasons were talked about here. And I wonder, right, like how many of those reasons were in those communications from your upper management to everyone, right? The greater good of everything, right? Those are important things to talk about. So for me, like moral of the story, right, is to like hone in to that humanity, right? Like we have to hold on to it because there's so many things that are pulling us away from it. And I think that is the core of business. Even in the last session, if anyone was here in the last session, IKEA just spoke, amazing talk, but there is something about a leader who really understands what it's like to work with humans and think about uplifting everyone around us and not just that, bottom line. Yes, there is a bottom line that we need to have, right? Because we need to sustain what we have, but we also need to uplift everyone at the same time. And that's the point, right? So if I was to say other things like be human, right? Just think about that. Think about what feels wrong. Keep asking that question, because why does it feel so wrong to be human at work? Why does this feel wrong? And let's poke at it. Keep thinking about it and have conversations about it. I'd also say to be advocates of your fellow human, because sometimes it's not something that's wrong that's happening to us, but it's wrong that's happening to someone else. And so we need to shed light on that and be an advocate for that, right? So I'm going to close us out here. This is Why Does It Feel So Wrong to Be Human at Work, episode 1. I had a great time talking with you all. Thank you for the energy that you brought. Did you have a good time here? Did you enjoy this one?
I had a great time. I'm going to be honest. I was nervous.
Gotcha.
I will fess up. I was nervous because at the end of the day, what you and I are trying to do here is not necessarily have this great actionable insight that I can take back to my office and say I'm going to apply this right away. But it's more of this idea that how can we think a little bit harder about how can we connect and how can we resonate with our different audiences in a way that matters to them.
Absolutely. Let me just say some quick thank yous here. I want to thank you to IABC for, one, allowing us to have this stage. I want to say thank you to Maria and Letty for connecting us all together serendipitously. I want to say thank you to Brielle, marketing manager at Local Wisdom, making us sound so good. And I want to thank you all. Y'all made history here. I don't think there's ever been a scenario where a podcast was recorded live at the IABC stage. So thank you all for being here. Why does it feel so wrong to be human at work? Follow us, tell your friends, enjoy, be well, be human.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.